So I'm John Wirtz of the Montgomery County Tea Party. With me is Pat Tibbs, Dennis Tibbs, Brian Crumby, Del Fessenden, Bob Bagley, and Larry Rogers. And we are here with Logan Gatewood, and he's running for Montgomery County Constable of Precinct 5. So with that, Logan, I'll turn it over to you and for your up to 5 minute open.
Okay. First off, I'd like to say thanks to all of you for having me out here to speak to you. I think this is a really neat thing you guys are doing to vet candidates. Admittedly, I'm a newcomer to politics. This will be my first race. I'm looking forward to learning a lot. I think this will be a good experience for me and my family. Not to get too deep into the personal piece of it, but my wife and I have had a young son, we had him 7 months ago, and so deciding to run has been something that we've had to pray over quite a bit in our house, and we've had to really kind of seek guidance on whether this was a good idea or not, and we really feel compelled to go forward with this and really drive at this and see what kind of good we can do, because I think that I have some good ideas about what to do with the department and how to improve things for the residents of Precinct 5, and I think that my wife will be a great champion for a lot of those things. So I'm probably not going to take up the whole 5 minutes for my intro, because I'm just not all that long-winded, but that's kind of where we're coming from, and again, I just really appreciate you guys having me out here.
Okay, good deal. Well, thanks again for coming out. This begins the Q&A part of our process. What is your position on both open carry and constitutional carry?
So it's kind of an interesting dynamic that you get into when you start talking about open carry versus constitutional carry. I, for one, am a big proponent of the open carry law. I think that it, for concealed handgun holders, I think that it really enhances their capability to carry and protect themselves. You know, especially, it's kind of hard to wear a giant parka in the summertime to conceal your weapon sometimes. You know, when you get into the idea of constitutional carry, I really feel like the core of the constitutional carry argument revolves around background checks and vetting of people, as far as, you know, whether anybody can carry or if you have to be, you know, a law-abiding citizen who's passed background checks. And, you know, it's a double-edged sword. You know, I think our Constitution is what it is. You know, it's a document that it's really pretty simple. And you know, I don't know. I think there's a lot smarter people than me that are debating those issues. I personally believe that you know, this country was founded on some principles, and they were put into documents, and that our Constitution kind of speaks for itself. But you know, we'll kind of see where everybody else in the halls of power in this state and this country land on those kind of issues.
So, are you in favor of constitutional carry too as well? I take it, or what?
I am, personally, yes.
Okay.
But with the understanding that you have to pass background checks and you have to get a concealed carry, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, not a time.
That's okay.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I feel like a person should, if they're going to carry a firearm, they should be, you know, vetted, you know, at the basic level, run the basic, you know, they should be able to buy a firearm in a store. They're going to carry one, you know.
Well, okay, to go along with that then, if I go into the store to buy one, they're doing a background check to be able to see if I can buy one.
Right.
So are you then in favor of this, me having to apply to the state to be able to get permission to carry it now and to get them to do a background check on me, even though I've already had one and I can legally buy it?
Me personally, no, but
Okay,
I'm pretty open with my ideas about, carrying firearms and
okay.
that we have a basic right to keep and bear arms in this country, so.
Okay.
I think it presents an interesting position for police officers, but I think that's where police officers have to get, acquainted with the way that,
Well, Texas is behind times with the rest of the nation because there's a number of states that have had open carry for years. Colorado since the 1800s, 1860, and
Matter of fact, Texas is one of the only six.
Six or seven now.
right, that don't have open carry. And the idea that everybody's going to be shooting everybody,
It's absurd.
that's only happening in Detroit where they don't have guns,
right.
Or Chicago.
or Chicago.
I mean,
Legal people don't get it.
the bottom line is gun control does not stop crime because criminals do not obtain guns legally.
Right.
They don't carry guns legally. It doesn't matter what kind of laws you put on the books, criminals are not gonna obey them because by definition, they don't obey laws,
They're criminals.
so.
Okay, what's your knowledge and opinion of the Strong Cities Network? And what action would you take if the Obama administration or any other one that were to possibly be elected attempted to implement it?
How politically correct do I need to be? I'm on video, so.
Be as frank as
As
you
far
want
as
to
you
be.
want to.
No cussing.
The Strong Cities is in concept, just from the basic idea of information sharing, it would be a good idea. But there are two main flaws with Strong Cities. Number one, the federal government. Number two, the UN. Okay? Don't really care for either of those organizations. I have a natural mistrust for the federal government because of the way that they overstep their constitutional bounds over and over and over again. And I have absolutely no trust for the United Nations. I've seen firsthand in a lot of the countries that I've visited the things that the United Nations has done and how badly they've left those countries. So I am not in favor of the United Nations or anything that they stand for. And I think that safe cities or strong cities is another example of federal overreach. The way that I understand our Constitution is that we are supposed to have a limited federal government with the majority of the rights and powers reserved to the states, and that is not what we have in this country. We've spent 200 years complicating a very simple document, and I don't feel that it's a right move. I think that it's trying to get information passed one direction and not the other. As far as if the Obama administration were to try and implement it, and I were, in a position, in an elected position, I would do everything in my power to block it.
Okay.
Okay. We mentioned a couple times, providing security, protecting the neighborhood, fighting crime. And that's kind of a secondary function for the constable, isn't it?
Correct.
So you consider looking to go into the sheriff's office or something like that? You haven't been in law enforcement before, huh?
No. So, there's a lot of there are a lot of things that a constable's office can do. Primarily their job is the chief process server for the justice of peace courts. But if you look at a lot of the really successful, robust constables departments in this state, a lot of them provide a full range of law enforcement services. There's a lot of money that goes into the constables departments, all 5 of them in this county. And it's about making sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck, right? So if there is a way to take a look at the organization, the budget, and figure out how to provide better community policing, better police services, in addition to what's available through the sheriff's department or the local police departments, I think that any constable has a responsibility to do that. I think that if you just stay within the narrow scope of, providing the process service, then I don't feel like the citizens of the county are getting the most bang for their tax dollars.
So any constable can decide basically what his range of service is?
For the most part, I mean, it's pretty, open, they can provide a full range of law enforcement services. They can do criminal investigations. They can provide, you know, for lack of a better term, SWAT teams, community policing, patrol. You know, they write a lot of speeding tickets and things like that. So, you know, with the cooperation of the Commissioner's Court and the county judge, they can expand their roles and responsibilities.
Constable have to live in this precinct?
Yes.
Can I do a follow-on to that? Okay, and number 3, because time's about to expire. So you can just take it out of my turn next time around. And number 3, what do you see as 3 major challenges for your office? Did you ask the current budget?
No.
No. Did you know what the current budget is right now for Precinct 5?
You know, I'd looked into quite a bit several months ago. I think it's about 1.7 million right now.
Okay.
1.7.
And there's a,
The sheriff's 90 million and the constable's only 1.7.
yeah, the constables have very small budgets compared to the sheriff's department.
They get paid.
Okay, and so you were talking about putting more deputies on the streets. Creating a budget that achieves the goals of the department without any significant burden on taxpayers. This can be achieved by developing a very robust reserve division. Explain how you can do that and still keep the tax, you know, the burden of the taxpayers in check, you know, from increasing significantly.
So reserves are a great resource that I think is underutilized in a lot of areas. You know, reserve peace officers in Texas have to be fully licensed and trained just like a full-time officer is. So those are resources that you can tap into, and a lot of really advanced departments, especially in Texas, have used reserve divisions in order to augment the other functions of the department. So, you know, you have a large reserve contingent that doesn't eat up a lot of county resources. I mean, you're talking about basically uniforms and radios for these guys. And so the outlay of expense versus the service that you get from these guys is tremendous. It's fantastic, you know. So if you utilize a reserve division and you utilize it properly, you can put a lot of trained, experienced officers on the street to fill those gaps when it comes to things like community patrols and adding more deputies on the street and the visibility of the department, things like that.
They're like candy stripers, right? They're free labor.
Yeah, they're free labor, you know. I mean, basically, you give them a uniform, a badge, and a radio that they can check in and out.
And I bet they provide their own gun, huh?
They do.
Gee.
In fact, a lot of departments make them
That's
provide their
great.
own uniforms too.
Pretty hard.
All righty.
Okay, we provided a natural follow-on for that. I guess what my line of questioning is along the lines of personal experience. You know, you've just talked about and touted the reserves. Have you ever been a reserve officer? If not, why not? What has your interaction been with reserve officers? How many reserve officers does Precinct 5 have? Why don't they have more? What are you going to do to encourage that?
Okay, I'll
Why
try.
don't you start over? Sorry. Start your timer back over.
Okay. Pretty question.
I'll try to answer all those. So no, I've never been a reserve officer. I have, you know, there's always, obviously anybody who runs for this kind of office has always had a desire to be in law enforcement or has been in law enforcement. You know, I served a number of years in the Texas State Guard, and I served with a lot of police officers and reserve police officers in that time. I learned a lot about their interactions and stuff when I served with those guys. Additionally, my dad and my grandfather were both reserve officers, and so growing up, having, you know, seen what they do and experienced what they they went through and the training that they had and everything else, it really gave me an appreciation for reserve peace officers. As far as how many reserves Precinct 5 has at the moment, to be honest with you, I don't know. There's not a lot of information out there about the department itself and what the makeup is. It's hard to get information. You know, there's just not a lot of transparency there. I don't think it's purposeful. I think just organically there's not a lot of transparency in the organization of the department. I think that what I would do to increase those numbers is, if you're gonna have a reserve division, you have to request a number of reserve openings from the Commissioners Court and get those approved. And then you can go about building that organization through already licensed peace officers. So you're looking at guys who are reserves in other agencies, or guys that are getting out of the full-time law enforcement game but want to keep an active license and an active commission. So there's not a big outlay for training costs and things like that.
Okay. Bob?
As an elected official, there's no required amount of time that you have to spend in the office or spend at work. Technically, you could come in an hour a week or a month, and that would be sufficient for you to still draw your salary. Do you plan on putting in a 40-hour week? And if so, is it going to be behind the desk? Is it going to be out on the streets with the patrolmen? And are you going to go for certification, state certification?
Okay, I'll answer the last question first. Anybody who's elected constable has 270 days to provide their T-close certification to the JP court. So if I'm successful in the primary, then I'm gonna get certified before the general election. I'm gonna go through the academy and get that squared away. As far as the number of hours that I intend to work a week, I think a 40-hour work week would kind of be a vacation for me, so it's not something I'm used to. I put in a lot more hours than probably my wife would like right now. It's just my nature. So I would probably put in a lot more than 40 hours a week, because being a chief administrator of a law enforcement agency has got to be a 24/7 job. You're never really off duty if you're doing the job right. How will I spend those hours? Initially, there'll be a lot of time in the patrol car with other officers. I think that it's immensely important to learn the jobs of the department. I think you need to work shifts. Be another deputy, be a deputy's partner for the day. And do that regularly. I think there is a certain amount of time that I would need to spend in the office, looking over budgets and policies and things like that to understand where impact can be made. But definitely need to spend quite a bit of time in the field. I don't feel that, I would be doing anybody any good if I wasn't out interacting with the public at least every day. At some point in the day, getting out and meeting people. If I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing my job. Hey, I finished on time.
What is the geographical boundaries of Precinct 5?
So it extends on the south along Spring Creek. On the western side is the county line between Montgomery and Waller counties. On the north, it runs kind of a jagged line near 105. And then on the eastern side, it's just to the east of 2978, I believe, is this road right over.
Yeah.
Right over here. So.
How many personnel are in the constable's department? Precinct 5 now.
Again, it's not terribly clear. I did some extrapolation from the budget, and it looks to be somewhere between 16 and 20. people that work in the department. Of that, I don't know how many are sworn officers and how many are administrative personnel.
How much does this position pay, do you know?
In this budget year, it paid $126,900, I believe.
And you're in oil and gas contracts, and you're a manager. You will resign that job and take this. Will this be an increase for you or a decrease?
It'll be a decrease.
So that means you really have a desire to have this job, I mean, to take a pay cut. That's,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we've really kind of prayed over this quite a bit, and we're feeling kind of led towards this. So we feel like this is the right thing for our family. Yes, I'll take a pay cut. We've looked at the budget and we figured out how to make that work, and so that's been part of our planning.
Okay.
Before I pass it over to Pat real quick, just a quick question on your education. You got a master's from A&M, and what's the undergrad and a master's in?
I have an undergrad from Sam Houston State in history.
Okay.
I have a master's in industrial distribution from the engineering school at A&M.
Thank you.
I hate when people take my question. Very good. What do you see as the three major challenges for the office that you're running for over the next term?
So, I mean, I think first off, we've got to look at increasing the transparency of the department for the public. I think that, the public needs to see more about how we're spending our money. They need to see more about how the department's organized. They need to know more about the inner workings of the department. I think that kind of feeds into the idea of becoming a 21st century community policing organization. I think with greater transparency and greater community understanding of what the department does on a daily basis, then we can then go about getting the community more involved in the day-to-day activities of the department. And, the citizenry that we are sworn to serve and protect will then begin to support us more and understand us more and interact with us more. And that'll allow us, to have better relationships with them, understand crime that's going on in the area better, and have more innovative means to fight with crime. I think secondly, we've got to really develop a robust reserve division. I mean, I've talked about that before, that I really do believe that the reserves are a key component to the strategy of any successful law enforcement agency. I think unless you have basically a blank check to hire as many full-time deputies as you need, then, the reserves have to be an integral part of the organization. And thirdly, we got to develop a budget that supports those two goals, but doesn't put an incredible burden on the taxpayers. I mean, we can't keep going back to the taxpayers and asking for more money and more money and more money. We've got to figure out some funding options, especially with reserve division that allows us to go seek funding from other sources, mainly the community. And if the community doesn't support a reserve division, then that means that they don't want those kind of services. So, let's not expend time and energy on developing them if the community doesn't want them. Makes sense.
Okay, you mentioned having some contacts in the legislature. Who do you know that's in the Texas legislature?
I know Dan Flynn. I just talked to him last week.
Who's that again? Dan Flynn?
Dan Flynn.
Okay, thank you.
He's a state rep for District 2 up in Northeast Texas. Had a really good long conversation with Cecil Bell a few weeks back. I was very impressed with him. He was a very, very gentlemanly fellow. Took a long time and just talked to me. I really appreciate his counsel and everything. I served with both Dan Flynn and Phil King and Alan Fletcher for several years in the Texas State Guard, so
Okay.
I know all those guys fairly well.
But there are a lot of those guys here locally that would probably be available.
Mhm.
One of the things that they tried to do last year is to make it illegal for citizens to record them.
Mhm.
So the subjects of dash cams and body cams being big recently, what is your view on citizens recording things from places where they have a legal right to be.
So I probably will conflict with a lot of law enforcement officers about this, but I think body cams, citizens recording police actions, I think it's a good thing. I think the more transparency we have, the better. I think that, you know, one problem that we run into is that a lot of times law enforcement becomes this closed fraternal organization that, you know, really doesn't like people seeing what goes on in the inner workings and everything. And I think that that's very dangerous. I think, you know, that was the norm in the military for a number of years. And now that they've kind of had to go open book on a lot of things, it's really changed the way that the military operates, and it's made it a better place to be. I think the police force is the same thing. I think that, you know, having that accountability to the public, I mean, when your actions are judged in the court of public opinion, you tend to act differently. And you tend to follow policy and do things the right way. So I'm in favor of you know, people recording and body cams and dash cams and, you know, making those things publicly available.
Okay.
Okay, we're almost at the 30-minute point, and we've got roughly 15 more minutes.
Okay, you've, throughout your questions and answers, or throughout the answers to the questions, you've made a lot of comments regarding interaction with the public. And especially in number 4, you want to get to know as many members of the community personally as you can. Describe what you have done in the past 5 or 10 years, what community involvements, the Lions Club, the Montgomery County Fair, whatever, what kind of interactions have you had in the community already in the past 5, 10 years?
Admittedly, I have not made as many inroads in that area as I wish I had. For the majority of the past several years, I've had jobs that required me to be out of the country quite a bit. It's made it difficult to be involved in a lot of organizations and whatnot. My wife and I are very heavily involved in our church, but as far as any civic organizations, it's been challenging to have those kind of memberships. You know, but the longer that we stay here in Montgomery County, regardless of whether I win this election or not, you know, I intend to be more involved in those type of civic organizations. I really like to get involved with the Fair Association. You know, I'd like to get involved in some of the civic organizations like Lions Club and things like that. You know, I would have liked to have already gotten involved since we've been here, but the having a kid and he has a lot of, he was born with several medical conditions that we've had to, he's had several surgeries, and we've had to be back and forth to Texas Children's quite a bit. It's been a strain on our time and everything to devote to things other than him. So, you know, I would have liked to have been more involved in things like that to this point, but been trying to take care of the kid first. And, you know, we'll get into that later.
A few minutes or a few seconds I got left. Again, you had a lot of emphasis on you getting out, knocking on doors, attending campaign events and so forth. How many doors have you knocked on so far? How many events have you had? How many do you have scheduled?
So we haven't started our door knocking campaign yet. We have a limited amount of resources, and we're trying to focus those resources on, you know, where they'll do the most good. So the plan is really to wait until after the first of the year, and then on just about every weekend, me get out and go knock on doors for Saturday afternoon or you know, however, Friday evening or Saturday afternoon, or however we can do it. Because
you don't have to go into too much more of that in detail. That would be something for after we turn the camera
okay.
on your strategy.
Okay.
Bob?
Constable 5 has a small number of deputies compared to 4 and 3. Maybe around the same number as 1, and I think less than 2. I've heard it's a problem. I'm not saying in Constable Precinct 5, but in other departments, a lot of these deputies have a second job, and they're performing their full-time job and their part-time job at the same time, getting double paid for it. Are you gonna be able to put something in place to manage, to make sure that doesn't happen? Because it's not fair for us, for taxpayers, to be paying for them to be on the roads and then to be guarding a bank, for instance. Is there something you can do to stop that and to make sure that it no longer takes place?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things. You know, first off, we have to make sure that we're taking care of our people, you know. Law enforcement jobs don't pay a whole lot of money. You know, that's just kind of the fact of the matter, but they don't have to pay so low that you're, you know, relying on government assistance. You know, there are ways to help, you know, people in those positions do better. I think there's some, you know, financial counseling that you know, we could offer to help them manage their money better. But as far as making sure that deputies are not working a second job while they're on county time, I think that comes with the constable getting out of his office. I think he's got to be out there where the deputies are. You know, he's got to, you know, they've got to know that at some point during the day he's probably going to pop up wherever they are and see what they're doing. You know, and if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then there's probably going to be consequences for that. You know, so I think that it's a matter of accountability for the constable, one, to make sure that, you know, the pay is fair, and working with the county to make sure that the deputies' compensation packages are adequate. But number two, accountability on the deputies' part to make sure that when they're doing their sworn county job, that they're doing their county job and not, you know, their second job. You know, there's cops all over the state schedule their second jobs for off-duty hours, so they need to do the same thing.
It's an integrity issue, and
Extremely.
we seem to be having problems with on our county, and I'm not sure that it's happening in Precinct 5, but I know it's happening in other precincts.
Whether it is or it isn't, I mean, that kind of, you know, that kind of thing has the possibility of happening. And so I think that's why it's so important for the boss to get out and know where his deputies are in the course of the day and know what they're up to.
Good.
You've been in the oil and gas, or in the business industry for how long?
11 years.
11 years. Along that line, I guess a lot of people will have questions of why you would be running for a constable's position when you have no law enforcement training or anything like that, but you do have a good feel apparently in the business world. Give us some reasons why people should consider you for this position when you actually have never had any law enforcement.
I think that's a really good question. I think that's a question that's going to come up over and over and over and over again. You know, and part of me thinks that I may be crazy in all this too, but you know, my thought is that the chief administrator of any agency needs to be more of a person that's developing strategy for the department, empowering employees to do the best work that they can, you know, ensuring that they've got the resources to do their jobs, that you can, you know, develop a direction, come up with a budget and an organization that can achieve the goals that you set. You know, it's really, leading a law enforcement agency is a lot like leading any organization, and the skill set transfers over. yes, I'm not a cop, but, you know, a good leader is not the smartest person in the room. But he's smart enough to know that he's got to develop a team of people that are smarter than him and empower them and listen to their counsel. And so that's what I would say is that, you know, just because a person, you know, I mean, you can talk about, you know, running for president, okay? What kind of experience does a person have to be president, you know? I mean, most of the time they've never been president before, unless they're running for re-election. So, you know, you develop a set of skills along the way that will allow you to do well in that job. And I also think that I bring, because I come from outside law enforcement, I bring a perspective to the job that isn't there now, you know? You know, you talk about outside the box thinking. I never liked the idea of outside the box thinking, you know, because if you're thinking correctly, there is no box. Just determine what's right and do it.
Along that line, what type of budget management have you had in the past?
So, in my current role, I manage roughly 200 and, well, I can't get too specific, 200 and some odd $1 million worth of capital budget. In my last role, I managed a capital budget of $6 billion. Which sounds like an incredible amount, but when you're talking about companies that spend, you know, $50–60 billion a year, it's, you know, it's not that impressive.
I want to piggyback on his. You put in here that you were an MP. Did you serve overseas?
No, I was in the Texas State Guard. So
Just as an MP?
yeah, I spent 4.5 years as an MP in the Texas State Guard, and then I received my commission after I completed officer candidate school, and transferred to the Maritime Regiment. So I was a maritime officer for.
Okay, so I was military police with the Air Force for a number of years. To say that you have no law enforcement would be a misnomer then, because if you went through the schools, which I know that you went through, you did have experience in the training and some of the hardest training that anybody goes through.
Well, that would be correct, but unless you've been an MP, you wouldn't really know that. So.
And people don't understand that, so
Right.
that's
why I'm not touting that experience in this election, is because, you know, it's like people can say, oh, well, you know, you're just an MP, you know, you're just a gate guard, you know, we didn't know anything.
not true, so.
Yeah, so.
I was an MP in the Navy. My main job was timing showers.
That's on
That's
camera,
Navy.
too.
That's it.
Classified secret.
Yeah, we had to go through, you know, the law courses, the mechanics of arrest, penal code, you know, use of force continuum. I mean, basically we went through all the stuff that's in the T-close manual, but, you know, because it was.
And you did get a certification.
Yeah, I was a certified military policeman. Yeah.
And you gotta qualify for with
So
weapons.
you have had experience.
But again, unless you've been military police, you wouldn't really appreciate that. So.
Okay, I think we've got just over 5 minutes. Who's your candidate for president?
Whew, you know, I really liked Carson for a good long while, but I also, you know, I'm still kind of in that debating phase. I like Cruz as well. He seems to, if I could just put the two together, you know, that would probably be, you know, if I could take the strongest points of both of them and put them together, that'd probably be an ideal candidate. But yeah, to be honest with you, I haven't really picked one yet. I'm still debating. You know, as news comes out and, you know, they keep talking, I keep listening, and, you know.
What about Supreme Court? Your favorite and least favorite? You have one.
I don't have a favorite. They're all on my least favorite list right lately.
Really, why is that?
I just, you know, I really feel like the Supreme Court has overstepped its bounds in even hearing some of the cases that they've heard. I really don't, I don't feel like they appreciate their position in the world. I feel like there's been a lot of legislating from the bench and, dictating to the states what needs to be done. And, in Texas, we elect judges. It's a good system. They're held accountable to the voters. The Supreme Court's appointed, and whatever political winds are blowing at the time, that's who gets appointed. So, I'm as a general policy, I'm not a big fan of the Supreme Court.
Okay. Got 5 minutes.
Oh.
Questions?
Early. I liked what you said about the Constitution being a living document, not being a living document. Can you reiterate that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the questionnaire, I was raised in a very conservative Christian household. I know that probably rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Don't really care. But one of the things that I was taught fundamentally was that the Bible is a very static thing. You don't add to it, you don't take away from it. Christianity is what it is. And my dad, being the good Marine officer that he was, he spent a lot of time, making the comparison between our faith and the American government, and one of the things that I really feel strongly about is that the Constitution is the same way. It's a very simple document. It's not hard to understand. It is what it is, and we've spent 200 years complicating the crud out of it. I mean, you talk about case law and legislating from the bench and all these things, and if we just got back to the fundamental idea of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and quit trying to complicate the Constitution and interpret, make interpretations other than what the document says, we would be a much better off country. We would return to those values that made us a great country, made us a world power. I just feel like we need more of that and less of this constant pandering to the ideology of the moment.
Okay.
Sorry, I get worked up.
Okay.
Oh, did I skip?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Question number 17, you said you've been conducting a lot of research on what best-in-class constable department across the state are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe briefly some of the high points of that research? What have you found?
So, in looking at constables departments around the state, it becomes evident that a lot of them, the best ones, move beyond the judicial support and into the broader areas of law enforcement. Part of that may be because they're able to generate huge budgets because of their tax base, and they got to find new and inventive ways to spend that money, so they're going to lose it. Or it could be that their community has recognized that there is a gap between the services that the sheriff's department's able to provide and the local police departments are able to provide, and those constables departments are filling that gap. But whatever the case is, some of those best-in-class departments have a criminal investigations bureau. They have a patrol division, a traffic division. They have a school resource division. They have their warrants division, their bailiff division. They've got all these different. They're organized into these siloed divisions, and then they have a very broad reserve corps, or a corps of reserves that serve in each one of those different divisions of the department, augmenting those officers. And so when you look at those larger constables departments and see what they can provide, it really kind of makes you take a step back and say, well, what could we do? You know, how much more could we do than what we're doing now? And how could we organize ourselves to be able to provide those additional services? How can we identify the gaps, and then how can we fill the gaps?
Okay, so I guess in my mind, you would raise the question, are some of those issues secondary to safety, or is safety the first priority?
Safety in what regard? Like officer
Well,
safety,
I
public
think
safety?
all law enforcement, priority one is safety of the populace.
I agree. I think, you know, you have priorities and you have focus, right? Your priorities have to be your core responsibilities, the things that you have to accomplish. Then your focus always needs to be on what's your overall mission? You know, why do you do what you do? Okay, why do we serve warrants? Well, we serve warrants so that, you know, justice is served and it preserves the public safety and the public trust. Okay, why do we do patrol? Well, police presence is a great deterrent to crime. Deterring crime increases the public safety. You know, why do you do anything in law enforcement? Well, you do it because you're sworn to serve and protect. You know, I mean, it's very simple. Serve and protect the people that you work for.
Okay.
All right, that about wraps it up. So if, on the Q&A part, if you want to take up to 5 minutes to close,
Okay.
you're welcome to.
I think this Q&A has been really good. I think it's really brought out a lot more meat to the questionnaire. I think you guys are doing a great job on the vetting process. If you're vetting everyone like this, power to you. I think that it's great. You know, I think the important thing is whether you guys think that I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread or not. You know, to me, what I'll say to you is what I would say to the voters. I am who I am, and you're either going to like me or not. And if you guys want to take a look at what I do and what I'm saying and what I believe in my experience, that's great. Just make sure that it lines up with what you want and you expect out of a candidate. You know, I would tell voters that they need to look at each one of the candidates and decide if those particular candidates' strengths and experience and their plan for the department meets their expectations for what they want out of their constable's department. If not, then they need to find another candidate to vote for. I may not be the right candidate for this job, but I believe in providing the public options. You know, I have ideas, I have things that I think I would like to accomplish in this role. I'm sure Constable Hill and Sergeant Clack have their own ideas about what they want to accomplish and everything. Voters need to look at all three of us and see which one of us matches their ideas. And if I'm not the guy, I'm okay with that. But I feel driven to provide this option. So, thank you for doing it.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.